Hey there and welcome back to the Code Wrinkles channel for a brand new video. In this one we'll talk once again about Blazor server authentication and more specifically about the idea of hiding or displaying content based on the authentication state, because this is actually one of the first tasks that we actually have to do when it comes to authentication in Blazor server. The first reason why we want to do that is of course that we want to be able to actually control what we display to a user based on its authentication state, and this is what we will look into today. Now, before we get to the hands-on part, I really want to have a very brief theory, and it all starts once again from the app.razor component, which is actually the bootstrapping component for your Blazor server application. So exactly when this component gets actually initialized, everything is set up for your Blazor server application, including authentication state and a lot of other things that you use throughout your entire Blazor server application, like routing and all of the stuff. However, here there is one very important thing, and we have done this in the previous video when we actually implemented authentication in our Blazor server application. We have done here actually two things. So first of all, we have wrapped the entire content that we have here in this component, which is the cascading authentication state. Now, this component is very important because this is actually the component that cascades the authentication state of your current session to all the other components in the app. And this is actually what it ultimately makes available the authentication state provider, which is a service that helps us in a Blazor server application understand if a user is authenticated or not, and a few bunch of other stuff, but on that we will have a dedicated video. Now, one other thing that we have done here is we have included this AuthorizeView component when we actually want to think about routing. And first of all, or before of that, it was only route view and then the params that we have to pass in to our Blazor server routing engine, of course. Now, the difference between this authorize route view and the route view, the regular one, is that in the authorize route view, actually, it makes us, once again, it provides us with the authentication state right in all the components where we actually want to do that. And it also provides us with another component, which is called AuthorizeView, which helps us to exactly understand in each component or at each place in each component if actually a certain user is authenticated or not. And in fact, this is important because when it comes to actually displaying or hiding content in your Blazor server application based on authentication state, the AuthorizeView component is actually the primary way how this is done. So therefore, in this video, we will actually look into this AuthorizeView and how we can use that. We'll understand how that actually works and try to actually accommodate a few different scenarios that we might have in our Blazor server requirements. So the first thing is that, of course, you can use AuthorizeView to actually hide entire components from the visitors that might not be authenticated. And let us, for instance, go here to this counter component. Now, here in this counter, I guess you're familiar with the standard Blazor server template, but we will, however, run this application and we'll understand. This actually gives us a counter with a button, and each time we push the button, the counter count increases, of course. And that's all fine. Now, if we want to actually make sure that we are able to see this counter and interact with this counter only if we are authenticated, then, as said, we would have to actually place everything here in this AuthorizeView component. So let's use it. It is the AuthorizeView component. Now, the AuthorizeView component, it has a few bunch of different other stuff that we can use. Let's think about them as subcomponents. So, of course, when we want to authorize something or to display certain elements of our Blazor server application based on the authentication state, then, of course, we have at least two different scenarios. So we have the first scenario when the user is authenticated. Maybe we want to display something in that case. Then we have the scenario where the user is not authenticated. In that case, we might want to display something else or even redirect to the login page, but we will actually talk about redirecting to a login page in a next video. But there is also a third scenario. Maybe you want to display something like a message while the authorization process is in progress. And actually, that's not very specific for Blazor server applications, because here everything happens on the server when the view is rendered. But when you have Blazor WebAssembly applications, that might be important, because your authentication will actually need to make probably a call to a certain API endpoint, and that could take a little bit of time. So until that happens, you might want to display a message that, hey, something happens, just wait a little bit and we'll let you know if you are authenticated or not. And of course, to accommodate all of these scenarios, or all of these scenarios, we have three subcomponents in this authorized view that we can actually use. The first one is, of course, the authorized one. And the second one, if we want to display another content, if user is not authorized, we have the not authorized one. And for the third scenario, if we want to display something while the authorization is in progress, and once again, this is more specific for, or might be useful for Blazor WebAssembly applications. For Blazor server applications, that might not be that useful, because everything happens already on the server, so you already have a result. So for this other scenario, we have this component which is authorizing. And in all of these subcomponents, we can place then specific content, for instance, if everything is okay. So let's think about what we want to do if the user is authorized. So in that case, we might want to actually display all the counter with the title and everything. So we might put this, of course, in this authorized view. Let's try to actually make this also look a little bit better. So it would be something like that. So if the user is authorized, then you will see the counter component like it is. But if the user is not authorized, so in our scenario right now, if the user is not authenticated, well, maybe we want to display, I don't know, something else. Let's take this paragraph from here, and let's maybe just change here what we display. And here we can maybe have a text, something like, you are not authorized to view this content. Okay, so this will be displayed if the user is not authorized. And while authorizing, and once again, that is more specific for Blazor WebAssembly, so we might not be able to see that in action. But here, for instance, we can maybe just replace this text with something that says something like authorization is in progress. So that would be it for that one. So let's run the application and look a little bit into how our counter component will behave. And right now, when we start the application, I just want to tell you, I am, or we will not be authenticated. So we are actually in the scenario that, well, we shouldn't be able to actually see that specific counter component. So the browser opened actually on the other page, and here actually we have this type of thing. And let's click on counter, and you see we have here, you are not authorized to view this content. So it means that, hey, I'm not authorized. So our authorized view component actually just worked. So if we take just a second, for instance, and we want to go here to our endpoint, which is identity account, and then login in our case, let's just log in, and here I have this user.example.com. I guess it should be the correct one, and then I'll have this password. So yeah, then we have the login process that actually also talks to the database, verifies if the user is okay, and we were redirected to our homepage, just like we have implemented in the first video on Blazor server authentication. And right now, if we click on the counter, we can see the counter, because right now we are actually logged in and everything works correctly. Cool. So that's kind of nice. Let me here navigate to identity account logout, because I just want to log out right now. And to see right now, I am not able once again to see that counter. Cool. So I guess we are actually done with this one. So we have seen actually how we can hide an entire component based on this authorized view and what we want to display if the user is not authorized, and what we want to display while the user is authorizing. Okay, let me then go over to another component, which will be this fetch data component. Now, let's say, for instance, that we also want actually to implement the same basic idea of checking if a user is authenticated and, well, display maybe a different type of content here. Now, the idea is that what we can see here is, or what we can have here, or how we can implement that is also by using an attribute. And the attribute, we can use an attribute in a Blazor component like this. We just specify attribute and then the attribute name, which is in our case authorize. And that's actually something that that we can take a look at. But I want to already tell you something about that. This is not the primarily way to actually do that, because the thing is that, well, you can actually use this attribute only on components that are actually routable, because the authorize attribute is actually part of the ASP.NET Core routing, and in our case is part of this Blazor routing. So as long as you have a route here, or that you specify something here under the page, everything's okay. But for a for a component that doesn't actually have any routing attached to it, we cannot really use that attribute. And furthermore, if we use this authorize attribute, we don't have that level of granularity. For instance, that would help us actually to display different type of content based on state. So here we just have, okay, are you authorized or you are not authorized? So let's run the application right now. And once again, we should not be authenticated. So we can take a look at how this behaves if we click on weather forecasts. I guess that is also the name of the... Okay, it starts, I guess it started on the other screen somehow. Let me bring that here, and here it is. So if we click here on fetch data, we will just get this message that it is not authorized, that we are not authorized. So once again, the downside of using this attribute a way to actually define if a component should be displayed or not has its drawbacks. The first one is that it's actually only possible on routed components, like components that have a route specified. And it doesn't really allow you or give you the level of granularity about what exactly do you want to display in different scenarios that the authorize view component actually does for you. So that's why I would actually always well, recommend to not use this authorize attribute at all, but to rely on the authorize view instead. Now, going back to this idea of authorize view. And here I want to go back maybe here on the index page. And okay, here we have something. And okay, let's say that if we are not authorized, we still want to actually see this page title with welcome to your app. But maybe we just want to also display a more personalized message to the user that is actually currently logged in. And of course, that is possible only if that user is authorized. So what we'll do here, of course, we'll use the authorize view component once again. And here, if the user is authorized, okay, authorized. Okay, I guess I have something wrong. Okay, here. Okay, sorry, it's not authorize route view, but it's authorize view. And then authorized. Sorry for that. Okay, so now we should be good to go. So if we want to display something only for users that are authenticated here, we can simply, I don't know, simply let's have here a certain paragraph. And okay, that went totally south. So yeah, let's have it like this. Now, why I wanted actually to do that is because this authorize view component, not only that it allows us to actually display some content or display some other content depending on if the user is authenticated or not. But it also provides us with a context variable that contains the claims principal that is authenticated. So this means that what we can do here is let's say hello, and here we can already say context. Like this is the way how we can actually access this context variable that the AuthorizeView component already provides us. And we can say user, and then we can say identity and then name. Now the name of the identity will be the email address for now, but the idea is that we will authorize or we will display this type of content only if the user is authorized. And the more important part is you don't actually have to get the authentication state in on initialized or something like that, because the AuthorizeView component already provides you with this information as a context variable. So you can totally use it already. And if we are not authorized, let's have it like that. So if we are not authorized, then we might just display something like we cannot greet you personally. So that would be it in this case. So once again, on the index, we'll see all this part, and only this other part of the component, we have actually a content that it will be displayed based on the authentication state. So that's why this AuthorizeView is important, because you can use it actually on each small view part that you actually want to display personalized content based on the authentication state of the current user. So let's run this application again, and we will then just look into how this homepage behaves right now. Just takes a second. It has started on the other screen. Let me bring it here. And here you can already see this message, we cannot greet you personally. Now, if we go once again to identity account login, and we log in, I guess it was user at sample.com. Then here we have a password. And if we log in, of course, everything happens in behind, but here you see that hello user example.com. So right now we have displayed a personalized content using this AuthorizeView, but also accessing the information about the authentication, the authenticated user through this context variable that the AuthorizeView component actually provides us, which is fairly nice, I would say, because we don't really have to take care about getting this type of information in other places in our Blazor server application. We can already get it from there, and we should be good to go. Now, of course, as said, due to the fact that we have seen here, for instance, that okay, we can maybe display some parts to the users no matter if they are authenticated or not, but some other parts, for instance, we can hide or we can display conditionally, or conditionally display different things depending on the authentication state of the user. And this brings me to another step that you might have as a requirement in your Blazor server application. And for instance, if we go here to shared, and if we go here to nav menu. Now here in this nav menu, we see that, okay, we have different menu items like the home, like the counter, and then like we have this fetch data. Now, okay, the home, we have seen that, yeah, okay, we displayed. However, for some users, we display something. For some users, we add something else because they are authenticated. The counter itself, yeah, whatever, we can just hide the entire component if the user is not authenticated. But the scenario is that, okay, usually you will have to actually hide some of your menu items based on the fact that, or if the user is authenticated or not. So of course, if the user is authenticated, that user should see actually this fetch data component. But if the user is not authenticated, it shouldn't even be visible there. Sorry. And as said, due to the fact that we can actually use AuthorizeView in, as said, every small part of our components, The answer to this is it's actually very, very simple to do, because we can just put everything here into an authorized view. We can put everything here in an authorized, and we can simply move all this code that we have here in this part. And yeah, right now, of course, that's a little bit, it looks better right now. Maybe, I don't know, also this one, just a little bit like this. Oh, okay, it looks awkward, but let's not focus on that. Now, of course, if the user is not authorized, we don't want to display anything. Those users should not even know that there is this menu item there. So once again, very simple, using this authorized view component, we can actually do that. So let's see in action and evaluate how this actually works right now. So just a few seconds, and then the browser window will probably pop up, and it really did. It also loaded in the meantime. So okay, right now we see that, okay, this fetch data component still appears, unfortunately. So I'm not sure exactly what happened there, but the idea is that theoretically that should be even possible. Let me just have a few seconds to actually look into that, because I guess probably there's a typo or something like that somewhere, and I will be right back and show you exactly what the problem was. Okay, so actually there was not a problem here, it was just me being a little bit silly, because actually everything works as expected. So let me show you this once again. If we just run this application and bring it on this other screen right when it starts, and we look into exactly what happened there. So what it happened there is actually that I am authenticated right now. So that was the exact problem. And since I am authenticated, I also see this message, and of course I also have this this fetch data component visible, because I forgot to actually log out when we did the last demo. So if we go here to identity account and log out, you see that we were redirected here back, and now we don't have that fetch data component at all. So we don't see that. It could be that that it is not even there. We don't know if there is something like that in our menu. We don't really see that because we are not authenticated right now. And if we click on the counter, as we see, we only see that you are not authorized to actually view this content. So as you see, everything works fine, and this authorized view component is very, very powerful and very helpful, of course, when it comes to this task to hide or display content based on the authentication state of the user. And it's very powerful because of two reasons. First of all, you can use it very, very granularly and even specify different scenarios, like what do you want to display if the user is authenticated, what do you want to display if the user is not, and what do you want to display if the user is in the process maybe of authentication. And as I said, that is actually useful in Blazor WebAssembly application, where the authentication actually takes place remotely or occurs remotely. In Blazor server, that is not the case, but still we have this option there. But then it's also powerful because we can even use it in a very small or singular parts of our components. Like for instance, here in this nav menu, we just want that one item should not be displayed at all if the user is not authenticated. Sure, no problem. We can use the authorized view and only on that specific menu item, and it will totally work. And last but not least, this authorized view component is very, very powerful and useful. And let me go back here to the index page, because not only allows us to actually do this type of checks or displaying content conditionally very, very granularly, but it also provides us already with a context variable that actually holds the authenticated user. So you can just directly use it simply using this add context, and you have already access or you have access to this authenticated user information, and you can use that however you want to do. No need to actually obtain this information manually from somewhere, because it is already provided to us in this authorized view component. So that's mostly it for this one. I hope that content was very useful. Probably it was not too complicated, but I guess it's very important to understand very, very good what actually this authorized view component is, how it works, how comes that we actually have it available. and how comes that we can use, for instance, or access the information about the authenticated user directly in the context variable. All of these are very, very important information, even though simple ones, but it's very important information when it comes to actually go to more complicated stuff. And that's why I have wanted to create this video right now to actually set a very solid foundation to all the videos that will actually follow, and that will be certainly more complicated than that. If you did enjoy this content, please don't be shy and feel free to share it with your colleagues, with your peers, spread the word. That's very, very nice, and I would totally appreciate that. And of course, if you are not a subscriber already, hit the subscribe button, but more than that, hit the notification bell also to be notified whenever something new happens here on this channel, because we tend to actually provide new content very, very, very often. And last but not least, if you have questions, if you want to say anything, don't be shy and use the comments section of this video, and I will be more than happy to jump in and answer all your questions and jump into all the discussions that might arise from this video. This being said, once again, thank you very much for tuning in and watching, and until the next time, I wish you the very best.